was strategic communications advisor to Pavlo Klimkin when he was Ukraine's foreign affairs minister back in 2016 to 2019. Cormac, thanks for joining me today.
Sheila, it's lovely to speak to you again.
So look, Ukraine is inevitably on the agenda today when President Macron and Prime Minister Keir Starmer meet. What's your best guess about what they'll be addressing and saying and thinking?
Well, look, Sheila, in my first reaction to to Donald Trump's win last Monday or Wednesday morning, I said that there could well be a silver lining in this for Ukraine, in that it might mean that European leaders need to wake up and realise that Europe needs to stand on its own 2 feet. Because I've been saying from the start of this year in interviews that I believed, regardless of who won the US election, that the United States could well be lost as the reliable security partner that we have known in recent decades. Now, you know, from the beginning of this horrible war, Britain has been, without doubt, Ukraine's greatest supporter. And the people who have told me that consistently have been my senior Ukrainian diplomat and military friends. And they stressed upon me in the early days that it wasn't just the weapons and the support that we gave them. We're about third in terms of money terms behind Germany and the United States. But it was impressed upon me that it was the great leadership that Britain was showing behind the scenes to marshal others in support of Ukraine. So, you know, Brexit has definitely weakened our links with Europe. But I was doing some work with Core Cities, who are the top 10 or 11 cities in the United Kingdom outside of London last year, into looking at supporting Ukraine at a city level. And it was remarked to me by a local government colleague involved with Core Cities that one of the things that had made it easier to keep British cities in the game with European counterparts was the support and the leadership that Britain had showed on Ukraine. So I think it's absolutely critical that the United Kingdom doubles down on finding a way to increase the strength of its links with Europe.
And we know that Germany's in a bit of a temporary pickle at the moment in terms of its governance. But as you say, it's the second largest contributor to the Ukraine effort. We know that President Macron has big plans for the EU, for perhaps himself in the EU as well. So you seem to be saying that all of those things given, Britain can still be a leading voice.
I think Britain absolutely must be a leading voice, because we have been from the very start. And I go back to, you know, I do believe that if there's one area and one area only that I might find myself agreeing with Donald Trump, it's that European members of NATO were not all paying their fair dues. The United Kingdom always has been, or certainly recently has been, 2%. We're now up to 2.3%. I would rather see us at 2.5 or above.
Well, and the Labour government insists we will get to 2.5. But
yes, and I'm well aware of that. So we wait to see what happens. But, you know, Britain has a very important leadership role to play in Europe. And I think, you know, there have been promising words from Macron, who said only a few days ago that currently in Europe we are herbivores facing carnivores. And the carnivores he talked about were the axis of evil in Russia, China, Iran and North Korea. And he said if we face carnivores as herbivores, we will lose, that we need to at least become omnivores. I thought it was a very interesting analogy that he drew. And, you know, there are also promising signs in Germany. The government of Olaf Scholz has just fallen. And Olaf Scholz, despite pressure from his own party and coalition members, has resisted, for example, giving Taurus to Ukraine, which is a weapon that the Ukrainians say they need. The leader of the main opposition party has been hugely critical of Olaf Scholz on this and has already indicated that he would be willing to give Taurus to Ukraine. This would be a huge benefit to
and
Ukraine.
On that, let's talk about those long-range Storm Shadow missiles as well, which Ukraine wants permission to use and access to use deep in Russian territory against strategic and military targets. Macron and Starmer know today that whatever they talk about, that call is America's call, isn't it?
It is America's call, and the hope that we have now. I felt that America was holding us back on this because there are American components in both Storm Shadow and Scalp, which is the French equivalent. And I have felt that any decision from the Americans to allow those two missiles and indeed their own ATACMS to be used to strike. And we should be very, very clear on this, Sheila. What the Ukrainians want to do is to strike military targets from where precision missiles are being launched daily against Ukrainian civilian targets. It's been said by a few colleagues and friends of mine recently that Joe Biden was giving more protection to the Russian military than he was to Ukrainian civilians. So I very much hope, and there's been a lot of speculation about this
by omission,
last 2 months.
By omission, you mean? Joe Biden giving more protection to Russia by omission or by...
By omission, by not allowing Ukraine strike the military targets from whence these attacks were coming.
And can I ask you, just to finish, a broader question really, akin to the one I'm putting to callers today. Since Brexit, I mean, you know, and I know that in the year or two, maybe more, after Brexit, definitely more after Brexit, the word was that European leaders... when they got the opportunity to get together and indeed to express it to Britain, were essentially saying, what the hell are you thinking? What have you done to yourselves as a country? Now, people can disagree with that, of course, but basically they were looking at Britain and seeing a country having an identity crisis. It certainly felt like that, didn't it, at the time? Has that changed? Has that mood changed? Because you're describing a confident Starmer, a confident Britain, and we can't leave Boris Johnson out of this because he did play a blinder on Ukraine, in my view, anyway.
He did.
You're describing this very confident nation stepping out, being respected, leadership behind the scenes. Maybe see a bit more of it in front of the scenes would be good, but. Has that shock about Brexit and that what are you doing to yourselves, Britain, has almost embarrassed for Britain feeling, has that gone from Europe?
Well, Sheila, I mean, I had my own experience in my short 2-year career as a diplomat when I worked with the Ukrainians going around Europe at meetings, and fellow diplomats from other European nations were saying the exact same thing to me. What have you done? Can it not be reversed? There was so much genuine affection for the UK. But I think what this horrible genocidal war in Ukraine has done, it has brought Britain back into the game. So look, it's beyond my pay grade to discuss anything about Brexit or to give my personal feelings on that. But I do feel that the great leadership role that we played, mainly under Boris Johnson, has kept Britain in the European game. And I think, it's not only Ukraine faces an existential threat from this Russian war of aggression. All of us in Europe face an existential threat. And hopefully, my hope is that this shock, which it is to many of a Donald Trump presidency, will make European leaders wake up. And of course, the other thing is, we know that Donald Trump is notoriously unpredictable. We don't know what he'll do. I take all the recent leaks from his transition team and other advisors with a very large pinch of salt at the moment.
And his communications people keep coming back, don't they, saying whoever the person is, that person doesn't speak for the president-elect, so we'll see. Cormac, thank you. Great to talk to you. Cormac Smith, former strategic communications advisor to Pavlo Klimkin, who was Ukraine's foreign affairs minister back in 2016 to 2019.